Here and get game 4 started. Get our players' information and everything in. For this particular matchup, we will have the top player is Tom Kelly. He is playing Dark. He'll be playing Imperial Entanglements. I know everyone watching at home is surprised that Tom is playing Imperial Entanglements. But yes, he's playing it yet again. He has chosen to start an Alien. Tom will play Endor Shield, Mob Points, and Imperial Arrest Order. No surprises there. His opponent in this game, the bottom player, we're going to switch up, is Greg Shaw. The two of them just played in the last round, and Tom was victorious. Tom is one of four players currently, 3-0. But all the players who won last game were the undefeated players. They were all light side. So they are all getting pared down to play 2-0s, and we'll get another count and get that updated. So we can keep track. Again, seems like that's going to be the running theme of the weekend, is that light side is just winning. The debate is whether or not light side is just better, or whether light side is a little more unpredictable. Like dark side is just really predictable. It's the top 3 or 4 dark decks are the top 3 or 4 dark decks. So whether light side has properly prepared for them, and dark side was more of a guessing game as to what people might play for light, and therefore some of the matchups may not be working in their favor. But we'll see. Greg Shaw's playing you profit. You can either profit by this or be destroyed for his objective. He has started Seeking an Audience, Cytor Calfas, virtual, and the Farm Polar. I must be allowed to speak virtual. That weird twitching thing will stop in a second once their hands stop moving around the middle of the screen. So while they get set up here, we're going to get some updates for those of you watching who are not looking at the forums. There are currently 4 players who are 3-0. We've got Tom Kelly, Michael Arisman, Kyle Kruger, and Mike French. They were all light side last game and victorious. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so last side was at least a little bit better. It was 7-7 between light side wins and dark side wins. Nice and even there. But the 4 top players were all. A lot of the players a little further down the leaderboard were victorious with dark side. And whether that's dark side isn't as bad as we think it is, or whether that's just a skill differential between some of the players there at the bottom. Several of the players we're looking at right now at the bottom, this is haven't really played in major events before, and that could be something with it too. There's several pretty good players who have gotten off to rough starts. Steve Harpster and Jan Westergaard were both 0-2 going into that last round, and they were at the bottom and were playing dark side. They were both victorious, so that may have skewed the results a little bit there. All right. So they're going to get their effects out. They're getting some starting interrupts out. We can see Greg's piles just fine. I'm going to see if I can get Tom to scoot his piles up a little bit, because I can't see what he's got going on there at all. Oh, maybe that's because his piles were in his hand. Tom chose to start Mara Jade. That's certainly help him flip a little sooner. He can move her out to the Jabba's Palace if he wants to try and flip his objective faster, or he can leave her in there and possibly try and back her up a little bit. depending on Greg Shaw's particular build of this deck, whether he's going to be running Jedi Lukes or Master Lukes, that could make a difference too. Mara's pretty hard to get with Master Luke, though. You got to blind draw 6s, and if you're not playing Jedi Luke, then you've got fewer 6s in your deck. It's also going to depend, too, on which version of this deck Tom is playing. Whether he's playing the Troopers or the more conventional, the standard build. He's going to go ahead, he's going to get a, looks like Mos Espa. He's going to get the docking bay. He's going to deploy Piet to the docking bay. He's going to get battle deployment, so he's not playing the Troopers, he's playing the standard build, which Tom has used pretty steadily for about the last 2 years. It's one of the things that's certainly propelled him to his familiarity and skill with that deck has certainly propelled him to one of the top players in the game currently. So Tom was here last year at the Endor Grand Prix, did make the top 8. He's made the top 8 just about every event he's been at for the last 2 years. He won last year's MPC. He made top 8 at the European Championships, the World Championships, the Endor Grand Prix. He was Player of the Year in terms of his point totals because of his consistent finishes. And so he's going to deploy. And he, like I said, all right, so there you go. So he moved Mara out, and he'll control multiple locations now. Greg Shaw is going to activate. He's going to drop Boss Nash Chamber. He could possibly use Seeking an Audience. He's going to pull Imperial Detention. I guess Tom is expecting to see Master Luke here, so he's going to pull Imperial Detention. So Master Luke does not deploy for free to Jabba's Palace. That would really allow him to possibly do some damage to Mara Jade. And at least slow him down a little bit, make him cost 2. Greg activated 2, 4, 8 force this turn. 2, 4, 6, 7, yeah, 8. He's going to spend 2. And we'll see if he just pulls 3PO. I think that's who he's looking for. Double checking his locations and polars and things as well, but I think I saw 3PO as he went by. I guess I did not see 3PO. His farm is in there though, so we can get the farm out. He is running a gift, of course, as the with the popularity of Court Scum. Will be almost useless in this matchup, unless he really wants to minimize some drains with where Mara Jade is. But I think Mara Jade's going to die in the next turn or two, so that's a card he can easily throw away to a 4 drain later. He's going to pull Lando for 4. Lando's going to use get him a speak. I must be allowed to speak pull. The search is used pile. We see a Qui-Gon in there. There's a Chewie with Bowcaster in there. I can't tell exactly which card it was that he picked. Now he'll use his once per game pull to get large moisture farm. Now he just has to figure out where he wants to put it. Which side of the desert? He's going to put it on Mara's side of the desert. Let me see if I can get Tom to scoot his piles up a little bit, though, just so we can see how much force and stuff he's got active and saved. If it's weird for you, it's weird for you. All right, so we can't get Tom to scoot his piles up. They're just because of where the camera angle is. Tom would feel uncomfortable having his reserve deck and stuff that far in front of him. He likes them a lot closer. He's very particular about where he likes certain things, and he likes his reserve deck right against the edge of the table. And unfortunately, with our camera angle, that's where it's going to have to be. So we'll I just have to do a little detective work and go from there. What he's doing. So, all right, so Tom's going to go ahead and he's going to force drain this turn. He's going to Tom's going to double check which Han it was, make sure it's the virtual one that retrieves 5 force and is immune to secret plans. There was a few years back, Reed Smith, started that version of Han under his audience chamber and didn't have the virtual slip on it, and people just assumed that they never pulled secret plans, and just kind of, and then Reed went ahead and freed Han and retrieved 10, and everybody, and his opponents were a little surprised by it. So it's kind of become a little commonplace now, just to double check, just to make sure. It's always a good thing. Read the cards on the table. It's always good advice, but nobody wants to be the one who got burned by that. So it's just something that people sometimes are a little more cautious about and double checking. So Tom's going to drop a Tempest Scout 1 to the large moisture farm. And he's got a couple of Biker Scouts on. It looks like Barrich and possibly Irol. That's going to control 3 locations. That's going to let him flip to the 7 side. He's going to drop Mahdi over there at the docking bay, which is probably where Piet's going to move over to. And there goes Piet moving over there. Tom showing no respect for Greg having any space in his deck. They're going to back up for a second. Tom's going to deploy Imperial Decree virtual first to help minimize the profit damage, and then move Piet over to the docking bay. But as I was saying, Profit is not a deck that typically plays a lot of space. It's really just a lot of ground mains and weapons and interrupts and things like that, and there's very rarely any ships. When I played the Grand Prix last year, I played Prophet, and I didn't have any ships in my deck, and people lack of respect for that. The fact that I'll just leave a Devastator sitting there by itself made me at least put 1 ship in my deck just to try and keep them honest. Something I noticed during a game of Brian Fred. And his first turn, he was playing Coruscant mains, the combat readiness deck, and his first turn he just went, pull a system. I pulled Naboo and put black 2 just at Naboo, and then the next turn he just matched for like Saber 2 and somebody else and put that at Kashyyyk. And all right, I'll just drain for 4 all game, and had no fear, whatever that, with just leaving those guys out there. So I at least snuck a home one in just to try and keep people honest, to make them either have to deploy a little bit more, or at least use a few interrupts to try and keep some of that stuff alive. And if you can manage to stay alive for 1 to 2 turns and avoid having to pay to drain, sometimes in a deck like Prophet, it can make the difference. But the conventional approaches, it's just not worth it. It's kind of like Huntdown in that aspect. You play little or no space. There's usually a token ship or two. Sometimes maybe just for that, to keep them honest. Dark side is a little more because of hidden base. You have to have at least something to try and probe, otherwise you're just going to get locked out, and they're going to cancel your drains for a while. But light side can get away with that in certain deck types a little bit easier. All right. So Tom's flipped. He's got pretty established board control here so far, but it's fairly early. Greg's going to use Seeking an Audience. He's going to use his 2 force, and he's going to deploy a guy from reserve deck. Chewie should be in his reserve deck because he was in his force pile last turn. That was one of the cards in his use pile when he did his use pile search when he deployed Lando. So he's got the option to get Chewie out. I think he's playing Leia Rebel Princess, so we shouldn't have any other options there. It looks like we see a couple of Jedi and lightsabers, which is about what we would expect. But I did see Master Luke, so that solves that riddle. All right, who am I kidding? I knew he was playing Master Luke because I loaned him the 3 Master Lukes that are in his deck. Yeah, oops. So Greg spends the 2 force. Looks like he's going to get Chewie. I guess the question is going to be, where's Chewie going to go? And will Chewie have any backup? I mean, Greg activated 12 force this turn, so Chewie's going to cost 5 plus the 2 to pull him with 7. So there's not too many more. Too much more force that he has to work with to deploy. So. Greg is still thinking. I think the option is too is whether or not he wants to deploy Chewie somewhere else, free Han this turn as a possibility, and retrieve the cards that he lost last turn from Tom's drains, or whether he wants to, be a little more conservative. He's going to deploy Chewie to the large moisture farm then, right in front of Tempest Scout 1 there. Certainly something that's very easy for him to hit. Now he's going to use his used pile search with Chewie. He's got quite a couple options in there. We see a Ray. There's a Sense, which could come in handy for something like a Trample. He's debating between the Sense and the Ray. If he deploys the Ray and uses Ray's search, Ray could get the Sense. So that's something else for him to consider too. Could deploy Ray with Chewie and then be able to battle because he can afford that. That's one of the few characters that he could deploy. And now he's going to spend 4. And now he's going to deploy the ray. And now he'll use her used pile search when just deployed. And we'll see if he takes the sense or if he takes something different. He's got 4 more cards to choose from now. He's going to play. Tom's going to play I Can't Shake Him to deploy a guy during Greg's deploy phase. Oh, I take that back. Tom's going to use it the other way. He's going to make Greg have to spend an extra force, to fire his weapon. Greg is going to initiate battle. Tom's going to react over with the other Tempest Scout. Oh, and he drew 2 1s. That's going to be a problem. Greg really needed to hit that ATST to clear out several of Tom's characters in one turn. Missing that is going to be problematic for him, and might be too much for him to overcome. Actually, I know we're only on like the second turn of the game, but that was kind of something he needed to go his way. So draw Battle Destiny. Greg draws a 4. Tom draws a 6. And then he's going to use his Biker Scouts and draw and subtract. Yeah. Profit against Imperial Entanglements is already a tough matchup. It can be, Lightside can win that matchup, but realistically, I'd say Dark probably wins this matchup, maybe like 70-30. It's a little more slanted in Dark's favor. Greg's going to lose Ray for the battle damage. He's going to go ahead and he's going to retrieve Free Han. He's going to retrieve 5 cards. So it's going to take back all the battle damage that he's lost thus far, but Chewie's kind of hung out to dry here. If Greg has a Hoojix, this may not be the worst situation in the world, because if Tom does want to battle him, then at least he gets another crack at shooting the Tempest Scout. Trying to get a peek at Greg's hand there to see whether or not he's got the Hoojix. He gets drained for 1, loses a Blaster Deflection, he loses a Jedi's Concentration, loses a Lightsaber Proficiency, and a Speak with the Jedi Council. It's always it's always frustrating as a player when you battle and you try and shoot a weapon at something and you draw 2 1s and completely miss something, especially with like an armor of 3 or 4. That's pretty easy to hit. And then the next 4 or 5 cards you end up top decking to Force Drains after that battle doesn't go your way are all your High Destiny cards. That's kind of a it's kind of a little kick in the groin there. That and those are the little things that can make or break games sometimes. Tom's going to go ahead. He's going to use Battle Deployment. He's going to pull Blizzard 2 out. That's going to give him even more power at that location. So if Greg does not have the Hoojix, then he's going to take way too much overflow, and that'll probably be game. Tom's also going to pull the last remaining location out of his deck. At least I believe that should be his last one. He's got 4 on the table already. It's usually what the Imperial Entanglements decks run are 4 locations. So he's going to get, it looks like Mos Eisley all the way at the other end of the board there. It's possible he's got one more docking bay. He might have docking bay 94, but I would have thought he would have pulled that by now. Greg does not have the Hujix, so that's going to be a quick game there. Tom's just going to deploy a battalion of guys, and yeah, Greg doesn't have the Hujix, so he would take way too much damage and overflow. So that was going to be a very quick featured match for you, but no, both these players can take some time off before the next round. Tom's going to move to 4-0, and now from here on out, his games will get harder, so having a break like this is a real good mental break, just to kind of let you recharge a little bit and clear your head, get some fresh air. Perhaps if we didn't have a lunch break, this would be a great opportunity to go grab some food. But even still, just going back up to your room and lying down for a half hour, taking some Advil or something like that can really help the rest of the day. Greg's going to drop to 2-2, but certainly still a long way to go these next 4 games. Like I said earlier, at least 1 or 2 5-3 should make it. And having 2 losses, played Tom twice. If Tom can go from here, Tom gets 6 or 7 wins, that would certainly boost Greg's strength of schedule. So he might be one of the top 5-3 players, should that come down to tiebreakers. But unfortunately in this matchup, yeah, I mean, like I said, Imperial Entanglements is favored to win usually. The light side needs, the Prophet deck needs a lot of things to go its way. And Chewie missing with that and getting hung out to dry there, that definitely was not the way to do it. And then for Tom to be able to use battle deployment to get a combat vehicle and then just deploy a whole bunch more stuff from his hand without a Hujix, there's nothing you can do about that. So we'll go ahead and we'll stop game 4 here, and we'll probably pick up the stream, and it's probably about 20 minutes or so. I'm going to kind of wander around the room and talk to some people and see if we can get some more updates. And I know some people have asked earlier about what decks people are playing and what the meta looks like. We're just trying to give some general observations about the room, and we'll be back in a little bit.